Does glycemic control rescue COVID-19 patients?
Sir, you're absolutely correct. First of all, I extend my profuse thanks to Dr. Das for being so warm and so good words he spoke, as well as Dr. Panda for having invited me. I'm thanks and gratitude to both of you, sir. And you are absolutely correct. In fact, the COVID morbidity and mortality goes hand in hand with hyperglycemia. As all of us know, that hyperglycemia predisposes to the inflammation, predisposes to excessive
Harshit,
hypercoagulability.
make Dr. Bhandari visible. Harshit, please make Dr. Bhandari visible. Take out Dr. Sampath Das now. Put Dr. Bhandari on the screen.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, please do it.
Yeah.
Yes, start. Bhandari, please continue.
Yeah. So so all of us know, after gratitude to you, sir, and Dr. Panda, I will share you the hyperglycemia goes hand in hand with the COVID morbidity and mortality. Like, look at this, sir, that this hyperglycemia would lead to the excessive inflammation, hypercoagulability, and there's a excessive glycation of the ACE2 receptors, which forms the entry point for the COVID spikes of the COVID virus. That's the reason there's almost 10 times more mortality if there's a persistent hyperglycemia, more ARDS, more thromboembolic phenomena with MI, and more complication. That's the reason, sir, that we need to be very careful of pre-existing diabetic patient who contacts COVID or new onset diabetes developed by the COVID positive patient. If our experience has been, if we have been able to maintain glycemia well, either in diagnosed patient of diabetes or new onset diabetes, we have been able to reduce the morbidity and mortality in these patients. Their migration to the ventilatory state or invasive ventilation has been less. Hence, I would say in COVID-19 patients, the predisposing factor of various complications is hyperglycemia management.
Rightly you have told, Dr. Bhandari.
Yeah.
The another thing I want to know from you is the steroids. What we have seen, many patients who are not diabetic earlier have developed stress-induced diabetes because of the use of steroids. And already we have discussed that aspect, but a special mention that people had worsening of the blood glucose status, people had new onset diabetes, and also went into diabetic ketoacidosis and hyperosmolar state after the treatment was started.
Sir, absolutely. I compliment your observation. In fact, we have never seen these values of diabetes earlier before, like 400, 500, 600, and patient going into DKA. But the issue in COVID-19 patient is to save life, to reduce mortality. And recovery trial has authenticated the use of steroids, the dexamethasone which they have used. So there are three etiologies which brings about the morbidity and declining course of the patient in COVID-19. One is the pneumonia itself. Second is a thromboembolic phenomena in the lungs. And third is a picture of ARDS. The first week of COVID-19 is an infective phase, and second week is the inflammatory phase of cytokine storm. Along with the specific drug of tocilizumab, etc., the steroids are one of the important components of the treatment of inflammatory phase of diabetes with COVID, number one. Number two, sir, in post-COVID also, the methodology of treating is to reduce the subsequent pulmonary fibrosis. You must have seen n number of patients with very high CT severity score of 10, 15, and 20 out of 25. They'll end up in excessive pulmonary fibrosis. So patient need to be given low dose of steroids along with the antifibrotic drug like pirfenidone, etc. Now here, our bottom line is that to prevent the inflammatory state, to prevent the cytokine storm, to save the life, as documented in the recovery trial, the steroids are must in a COVID-19 patient where prudently indicated. And hence, once we use the steroids, which causes hyperglycemia, COVID-19 itself causes hyperglycemia because of effect on beta cells and the ACE receptors. Hence, we need to monitor as precisely diabetes as we monitor in a DKA patient of a new onset type 1 diabetes. I have a feeling that one of the important challenges which we faced in managing COVID-19 patient has been very fine monitoring of the diabetes, either by insulin drip or by basal bolus, round the clock monitoring. In fact, along with the oxygenation, which is very easy to monitor,
Yeah.
because of the steroid, which are must to prevent the migration of patient to ventilatory state, to prevent the mortality rate, steroids are much. We will have to give as indicated or sometimes prolonged steroid to prevent the fibrosis along with anti-fibrotic drug. So monitoring diabetes is a must. If mild, we could think of
rightly mentioned, sir. Very rightly, you have given the effect of diabetes on the pandemic as a whole and the steroids and the outcome.
Yeah.
Now I'll go to Dr. Uni, and especially I would like to know that how this pandemic diabetology has affected the diet, the lifestyle, the treatment. We know that many of our patients have failed to come for follow-up. They have worsened symptoms and deterioration of their blood glucose control, and many have gone to critical state also. So he has a huge patient base to his follow-up. So Dr. Uni, regarding the pandemic diabetology and the effect on diet, exercise, and drugs.
I think the pandemic has had a effect on glucose control. I would say that the majority of people, I know that there are papers showing that during the pandemic, blood sugars actually improved. But I think, and I'm sure that I'm speaking for most of the doctors, that most of us found that people visiting the hospital had increase in blood glucose levels. People turning up for telemedicine had increase in blood glucose levels. And that is because of not just stress, but lack of choice of eating, because you have to adjust with whatever is available at home, and also limited ability to exercise. So stress, diet, and exercise together resulted in high blood glucose levels. Now, there are 3 studies. One study was done in the beginning of the pandemic by Dr. Sinha, Dr. Ghoshal, who predicted that the lockdown, the social restrictions might result in a slight increase in HbA1c, in an increase in HbA1c levels. That turned out to be true, but not to the extent the glucose levels went up. Second was a study from South India, which showed that many people with diabetes who stayed home, were educated, well-informed, motivated, actually did well. And the third was studies from Delhi, which showed that the blood glucose levels tended to go up during the pandemic, and that increase in blood glucose levels might also have an effect on the pandemic COVID. So these were the 3 studies, but the take-home message from these studies are that, yes, for the small group of educated, aware, and motivated patients who were able to do their monitoring and keep the glucose under control, and who had the infrastructure at home to exercise, those people had control. But the vast majority of India, which consists of poor people and middle-class people, they found it difficult. And I think that resulted in a high blood glucose levels. But I think doctors were up to the task, and we did our best to control the sugars. And now things are settling down.
Thank you. Thank you, Uni. Rightly, you have told that the pandemic had a very bad effect on the blood glucose control, and those who are intelligent patients with good resources could continue the good control, and those who want to cheat themselves, and also the doctor and the community, they were cheated by a very poor control. Now I welcome Dr. Arul Raj, our President API, and Dr. Ashok Das had given a very warm introduction, and we are all waiting you, sir. Dr. Arul Raj was a COVID warrior. We have heard him during the pandemic, and not only he has made all of us aware by giving training and the capacity building. He has worked with the government of India for a lot of policies, and the whole API, Association of Physicians of India, has been utilized as a forum to fight out the pandemic. Welcome you, sir, to the National Update on Clinical Diabetes. And we are very proud that in our panel discussion, you are there for COVID-19 through the lens of diabetes. I'll take an opinion of yours in this context. We used telemedicine during the pandemic. Many of our patients were connected to us, and we have advised and assessed. So in the diabetes management, how successful, how rational, how appropriate was telemedicine therapy, and post-pandemic, should it be encouraged for better convenience of the patient and the physician both? Dr. Arul Raj.
Thank you, Dr. Balda. First of all, I loved the title of this
a scientific program. NUCD
Sir.
was totally, and I liked it. My congratulations and appreciation to you and your team.
Thank you, sir.
Secondly, the topic under discussion is a very interesting topic. See, we are going through the pandemic of COVID. Not only we, globally, though we say the numbers have come down, it is still going up and down. Yesterday, thanks to our Honorable Prime Minister Ji, that he has initiated the vaccine also with, a lot of inverted commas, but still, this will definitely reduce the incidence of it. But WHO says till 2022, we will be living with COVID only. Let us see. It's only a question of time. Now we're coming to the diabetes during this pandemic. Not only this pandemic, there had been many times, pandemics in all these things. I just listened to Dr. Unya also. It was fine. The studies were all fine. Basically, it is a two-way street mechanism that, diabetes affects COVID and COVID affects, diabetes. In the sense, what I try to see is that during pandemic times, people who are not diabetic, they have a hyperglycemia. Or you can even say as a new onset diabetes. And those people who are already on treatment with diabetes, and these things are definitely aggravated.
Asked there, glycemic control. These are the very important things that are happening. How it is happening, what is the underlying mechanism? There is a direct effect on the beta cells, which has been proved by studies, and also the
Harshit,
entry.
मेरा video on करो. And number two is that, has Sasank given a message? Not yet.
Hello.
Ashok sir,
Hello.
please mute. Sir,
Yeah,
please,
sorry.
Please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. And secondly, the point of entry is ACE2 inhibitors. And now DP4 inhibitors have also been implicated. Therefore, diabetic control is lost. New onset hyperglycemia is there. This is what COVID does to diabetes. Now, what diabetes people are affected due to COVID is, diabetes is a chronic inflammatory disease, all of us know. And definitely there is a reduced, innate immunity in these people. And they are more prone to get any infection. We know right from the foot infection. Therefore, during this pandemic, diabetic patients are prone to get more, infection. This has been proved by many studies. In Wuhan studies, it has been proved. In Italy studies, it has been proved. Even in India, studies has been proved. Even RSSDA, has clarified that 27 to 40% of the ICU admissions in COVID are due to diabetes. Therefore, diabetic people get more infection. Not only more infection, severe infection. They are prone for a very severe lung infection, and they are going in for a respiratory failure. Either they go for high flow nasal oxygen or even a invasive ventilator. These are the two aspects of it. What is the difficulty in handling this? So, right, diabetes causes more infection, infection causes more diabetes. But the practical problem in handling these people is, we are not, of course, now we are able to move around. The common, system of management of walking, diet, regular drugs, all are definitely, interrupted. Therefore, there is a difficulty in controlling. That is why during the first meeting in March with our Honorable Prime Minister, I think I have shared that video with all of you during a video conferencing what he wanted. And what do you want as the doctors of this country? I demanded that telemedicine has to be made legal. All of us know that telemedicine is available to the common man for so many years. Mumbai High Court has put a caveat that cannot be used for, clinical, examination and treatment. Therefore, it was kept into the dark. And he asked me, what is that? I told him about the Mumbai High Court. And the very next day, he made a telemedicine legal, and all notices where GOs were served through our Medical Council of India. And your question is whether telemedicine is suitable or ideal. I will vote for it, because when you are not able to see the patient, when you are prevented from seeing the patient, and there is a doubt whether the doctor can get infected, in those situations, telemedicine is definitely, advantageous, and it has definitely served. Even routinely, if you see, most of us know, most of our patients do an SMS, sir, my blood sugar is 278. And here, either the doctor or his assistant sends a return SMS, just increase your insulin dose by 3 units or 5. This is going on. Now this is going in a structured way. Now ICMR has come out with the National Telemedicine Guidelines, and APA has given its own recommendation that we want to have a structured telemedicine, not a happy-go-lucky telemedicine. Something like that, they disturb the doctor and go for it. That we are given those guidelines. Now it is going on really well. See, for chronic diseases and follow-up, telemedicine will be the answer, not only today, for tomorrow also. In
Professor,
acute cases,
I would like to say that this has been further modified by NCDIR yesterday, and the booklet has come out, sir. That Bangalore Institute are expanding it to all non-communicable diseases associated with diabetes and COVID, and it is a great document. I am very happy that you brought it. My question to you, sir, very, very, very important question to you and to Ganga Khetkar, who is here amongst us. Raman, welcome, hearty welcome to you at the face of ICMR and the country for the COVID-19. Padam Shri, Raman, I would like to ask you first, then go to Arul Raj. What is your comment about the vaccines? Of course, you will say all the vaccines are recommended, but I want an analysis, not from the political point of view, from the science point of view. Country wants to know, like Arnab Goswami, nation wants to know.
It's very easy. There are few things which we have to recognize. One is, all the world and different countries are in different phases of this outbreak. Now, most often you tend to get a criticism for that you want to follow a standard clinical trial protocol that has been laid so far. But if I am to give an honest opinion, none of these vaccines could have been approved across the world if we were to follow that standard protocol and what evidences you require.
Yeah.
Which also means US FDA, when it came to accelerated track approval, they tweaked their approaches for giving this approval. When it came to UK went further ahead because they were facing one of the most severe outbreaks where even hospital beds were also not available. So what they did was, they thought the only way to protect was give single dose, give it across, and if it comes to even providing second dose of a different vaccine, it was acceptable to them. Now, you look at India now from a different perspective.
Yeah, we have three vaccines: Covishield, Covaxin, and the one from the Bharat Biotech.
Yeah, there are only two vaccines which are currently approved.
Covishield, Covaxin.
And Covishield has some data that has emerged from UK and Brazil.
Yes.
The dose that we are following is one standard dose each, both the times, instead of what was reported to have higher efficacy. One short dose and the other one was a standard dose. The efficacy levels, there are certain issues. I can't just give one kind of a perspective and say this is better and this is not, because each one of them has strengths, each one of them has weaknesses. One must remember that adenovirus-based technology is little more tested, but yet to be approved. This is going to be one of the first approvals that will come, and that has been given so far even in UK. Second thing which we must understand, adenovirus vector is also, if you look at AstraZeneca data, almost 50% of the people, they tend to have local reactogenicity as well as some systemic side effects. Now, if you look at efficacy goes down to up to 67% with the regimen that is being, the dosing pattern that has been approved for India. Now, when you look at the 70% figure, now these figures are going to drop down as you will start providing it to people, because these are efficacy data, whereas effectiveness will come far lesser.
Okay.
But WHO has approved 50% as a cutoff. So by and large, people are comfortable with that issue.
Okay.
You look at Covaxin, which is Covaxin is Bharat Biotech product, where they are using whole virion, inactivated whole virion, which essentially means this is a product which we have used across in vaccines earlier. So it also gives you some leeway with respect to adverse events that may occur.
Yeah.
Because there are unlikely to be higher adverse events with the same.
But Raman, one thing, but they are also antigenically, they are also less. Antigenicity less. Am I correct, Raman? Compared to Covishield, in the Covaxin, the antigenicity is little less. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right, sir. It is not less, but the variability of take or successful immunization is higher with Covaxin.
Okay.
No, because when you provide whole virus, not each individual will perhaps react in the same manner. Whereas if you are taking a purified protein as the ultimate product, you are likely to have consistent response across.
Okay.
But then, as I keep on saying, the advantage with the Covaxin is it's a tested platform, not many side effects to be expected. And then it is possible that you may have lower efficacy. And the reason why I'm saying that, one of similar vaccines is a Chinese vaccine, which is Sinopharm. Now, Sinopharm, when it first claimed efficacy, it was 91%. And the recent data that has come from Brazil, they gave two figures at two different times. And the last one is coming close to 61%. So, which essentially means that you should not, you will not be getting so high efficacy over a period of time. Now, why does this happen? Because if you are giving accelerated track approval, you are trying to look at infections, at a point which is very close to immunization, right? And then at that juncture, like Pfizer, what the Pfizer data comes at 7 days, and then they followed it up afterwards also. But then what will happen is, if I measure protection at an earlier date when my number of new infections, which I have fixed as sample size, are likely to occur, I might find that the protection may be little higher. But as the time passes by, the exposure increases. No, because these individuals will have longer time for exposure, and naturally you will find the differences are likely to diminish for efficacy. So given that, what I would believe is, efficacy wise, both the vaccines should finally emerge as similar. The issue is, if I'm worried about adverse events, then Covaxin perhaps will have lesser adverse events compared to adenovirus. But adenovirus vaccine also is safer in that sense, no? Because if you look at the data coming from UK, there are not many adverse events which are serious, which have been reported with AstraZeneca vaccine.
Thank you. Thank you, Raman. I have got one question before I go to Arul Raj and Sudhir. I know you have been talking about COVID adaptive behavior. I borrowed this phrase from you and wrote about it because I like that phraseology that you made. Like today, phraseology Uni gave me was pandemic diabetology. Uni, I congratulate you. Like that, the phraseology I borrowed from you and written about it. So, can you tell us about the COVID adaptive behavior? Alok and Jayant, give me a little more time because we started late, and so we'll continue. So, for our 10 minutes. Now, what is this COVID adaptive behavior which must continue in spite of vaccine?
Yeah, COVID appropriate behavior, sir, is one where you have to keep on continuing following the precautions which were like standard precautions or universal precautions as we used to talk in HIV. Now it would essentially mean use of mask, washing hands regularly, and then safe distance is unlikely to go. No, even if the time passes by, whether I have received vaccine, I have not received the vaccine, I will have to continue to follow these COVID appropriate behaviors. Now, some people wonder, why am I saying that COVID appropriate behavior has to be followed even after being protected by vaccine? One must remember the data that you are reading about efficacy is only about protection from development of severe disease or hospitalization, in other words. So when they say 95% protection, if 100 people are given vaccine, 95 of them will not develop severe COVID disease which requires hospitalization. So essentially, what does it mean? We don't know enough about whether it can protect you from not getting infection itself or development of mild disease. There is early data that is emerging which says that there could be protection from developing mild disease, but we do not know about asymptomatic infections, because you have to imagine, if for such a disease you will have to do RT-PCR so often to detect new infection in a vaccine trial which would be 30,000, 40,000 people. So that's physically almost not possible for anybody to do. So the result is, we do not know. It is expected that there could be a better trend when there is immune protection. We don't know whether none of them will ever develop asymptomatic infection, but we know that if they develop infection, their viral loads are low. That's the only information that we have currently.
I think Raman, so, you are giving the greatest information. My president, Arul Raj, has brought out a white paper on immunization. And I was there. He had made me the committee member. And we have left untouched. Am I correct, President, sir? Mr. President? We have left uncovered this COVID vaccine. And I think, sir, we have to add an addendum now if you approve. And I'll request Professor Raman to be in the panel when we do this discussion with Nirmal Ganguly and all that. So Padam Shri has worked with Nirmal Ganguly. He's a Padam Shri and very highly decorated, sir. So we will need your help to add this addendum to our API book on on immunization white paper, adult immunization white paper, which Professor Arul Raj, my president, brought out. Jayant, can I take 1 minute more to ask Sudhir a very important question? Sudhir, what is your message, clinical message to the people? Because only Sudhir has managed largest number of cases to my mind. What is your greatest message regarding the management to physicians scientifically about the steroid, about the cytokine storm, about the remdesivir, which they are saying is not useful now, and about the about in the early cases about ivermectin? So I want one sentence direction to the country. Sudhir, first I'll ask you about the remdesivir, to be used, not to be used.
Sir, please unmute.
Unmute. Alok, Jan, give me 2-3 minutes more.
Yeah. Thank you very much. The enlightening words of Dr. Raman and Dr.
Raman is great. Raman, thank you very much.
It's a love.
Raman, thank you. You see you're following in our society.
We love hearing him, and it's so crisp to carry message. Sir, first of all, we need to understand that first week of COVID patients is infective and second week is inflammatory where cytokine storm builds up. Now, there are absolute indications of steroids to be given in COVID patient, which is must to save the life. Hence, to message to all my colleague physicians and members will be that keep a close eye on the hyperglycemic state of a patient who is already diabetic, or keep a close eye on the watch for the new onset diabetes only because of COVID, or in the people who require steroids for the particular indications and a good glycemic control. To begin with, you can think of continuing with the metformin or DPP-4 inhibitors, but keep a close watch in case if you need to institute insulin. So along with the COVID complications, along with the management of secondary infection, I think close watch on maintaining glycemia, euglycemia in existing or new onset diabetic patient is a must to prevent the morbidity and mortality.
Very good.
Which
Very
is
good.
a message I like to give it, sir.
What would remdesivir to be used, not to be
Yeah,
used?
regarding remdesivir, sir, I will tell you, remdesivir is one of the very important drug to reduce the virus replication. The consequences of viral replication are that excessive cytokine storm could be there. If remdesivir given in the first week, which is an infective phase, it is a very wonderfully drug. The side effect of remdesivir is talked about so much, but we have not come across the hepatotoxicity. Even in the renal failure patient up to eGFR 30, it has been allowed by nephrologists. So use prudently the first week of COVID patient to reduce the virus replication, and US FDA has absolutely ratified the emergency use of remdesivir, and we have seen that using remdesivir in infective phase of COVID, the gravity of cytokine storm and complications are much less.
Thank you,
Unfortunately,
Sudhir.
people delay using remdesivir to second and third week, which is not a right time to use. It should be started.
I think
me
and Jayant both use it very much. Last question: your opinion about three drugs. Number one, the ivermectin and doxycycline, first group. Second is your opinion about the repurposed metformin, and third, your opinion about vaccination.
Sir, regarding ivermectin and doxycycline, I will have my own reservation because not too many in vivo studies have come. We have seen n number of complications and patient landing into ICU was people who have been given by GPs ivermectin and doxycycline, which is not a proven drug. Okay. Regarding the second was, sir?
Metformin.
Yes, in fact, it's a good drug, but you have to keep in mind that many times people need to be given extra than metformin. So you need to keep a close watch on rising hyperglycemia, which can happen subsequently changing to DPP-4 inhibitors and insulin fast, not to stick to the metformin, but yes, it can be continued in the mild hyperglycemic patient. And thirdly, regarding vaccination, sir, I have a feeling that it is absolutely science, what Dr. Raman has said, that we need to believe in science. It is a outcome of our academic and scientific marvel of our scientists. Our bottom line is that we have to save lives, we have to prevent mortality, and I think it is prudent. All of us need to take vaccine, especially those who have recovered after 3 months, those who have taken plasma after 3 months, and we need to follow the COVID protocols as spoken by Dr. Raman, because it will prevent the hospitalization, the immunity buildup after 2 weeks of second dose, but you cannot stop having a milder infection to begin with. So I think following COVID protocols, vaccination, all of us should opt without any hitch and hesitation. I think little
thank you very much.
Yes,
thank you. Sampath, I'm sorry we have not come back to you for a long time. Sampath, can you tell us your perspective on the Professor Sampath, your perspective on the pulmonary involvement, the classification, and the various drugs that we use? Sampath? Yes, sorry, Sampath, I came back late to you. My audio went out of order. Yes, Sampath, please, Sampath. Sampath, please start.
Sir, sorry, sir, could not get the question, sir.
I'm telling something.
Yes, please.
Sampath is one of the frontline worker, and he has managed thousands of patients. So in your observation, patients without diabetes, patients with diabetes, COVID-19 with and without diabetes, what exactly you have observed the hyperglycemia and its impact, the complications and its impact, and how the diabetics behaved during the COVID-19. Sampath.
Sorry, sir, I'm having a bit of network issue. The thing is that there are two things that I have seen in the COVID is that, first of all, those who are previously diabetic are very difficult to treat because whenever these patients presented to us, they are always in a state where their sugar is not controlled at all. Because of the stress, the infection, and secondly, we have to use steroid in the treatment. So this is one part which we have seen, and another group was there.
I think he is disconnected. So we'll, yeah, Sampath.
Hello.
Yeah,
Sir, I think sorry for the interruption, sir. So there are actually two groups of patients which we have seen in the ICU. One part is those who were previously diabetic patients who presented to us with a COVID pneumonia in a severe state who require oxygen. So there, the difficulty for us was to treat this patient because most of them, I would say around 90% of them have a very high sugar level. It was due to actually which has been discussed previously because of the COVID, and along with that because we have to use steroids, so both of it added. So the treating them with was a bit of challenge to us. We have to use both the insulin as a infusion and means very high dose, means whatever dose they were taking, it was around 5 times the higher we needed, right? But secondly, what we have found is that there is another set of group patients, means around 20% of patients who are recently detected diabetics during the COVID time. Means they are never known to be diabetic, but during COVID, when they got admitted, so they were recently detected diabetic. Even though their HbA1c was less than 7, means HbA1c was less than 7, but their sugar was very high during that phase. And these patients continue to remain a high sugar because the more we are following up in our OPD, what we find is that these patients are changing to diabetic patients over the time. So these means around 1800 patients I have seen. I have kept a data around 436 patients were recently detected diabetic during the COVID pandemic from my database I'm telling. So this is quite a significant amount of number. So and regarding the outcome of the patient, what we have found is that this secondary bacterial infection, which is a problem with the patients who remain on ventilator for a long time. So if we compare the diabetic patient to the non-diabetic ones, what we have found that a secondary bacterial infection like ventilator-associated pneumonia or COTI, means catheter-associated UTI, were more common or more severe in patients who are diabetic. So actually, diabetic patients having COVID land up in one of the serious state, but these patients tends to develop more complications during the course of the treatment. So that's something which is a very important factor in the outcome of patients getting admitted to the ICU, sir. So overall, what I say is that diabetes actually increases both the morbidity, the mortality, the ICU stay, and the ventilator days in COVID patients.
I think Jayant, so Sudhir wants to say something. Sudhir, you raise the finger. You want to say something? Sudhir, you want to say something, Sudhir? Sudhir, you want to say something?
Unmute, sir, unmute.
You have to unmute, Sudhir. You have to unmute. Did you want to say something?
No, this is perfectly fine, sir. I think.
Okay. I think the type of patients which Professor Sampath described are the ones H1s with below 7. So they are recent onset diabetes, maybe because of the Sampath sir, maybe because of the infection per se, or maybe because of stress, whatever it is, because they are possibly not a known diabetic. Possibly, we cannot vouch for it, Jayant, but HbA1c being low, but hyperglycemia, a recent onset diabetes is a possibility. I just had one question to Sampath, Jayant. I had asked before I became out of internet. It was regarding the pulmonary manifestation, both clinical and CT.
So clinically, if we see that these patients, if we differentiate like mild, moderate, and severe, patients who are old age and having a diabetes, means averagely I have classified those who are having diabetes for more than 5 years and for less than 5 years. So if we look into the clinical symptoms, these patients continue to have these respiratory symptoms to a higher extent. means like cough, breathing difficulty and other things. And most of them have a COVID score of average of around 10 to 12. So these patients actually are more symptomatic, and the CT scoring or the CT severity scoring are actually more compared to, it means those who are more than 10 years of diabetic rather than those who are less than 10 years. So means I would say that my personal data says that
Sampath, what was your mainstay of management for them? Mainstay of management, apart from remdesivir, etc., steroid, etc., etc. What is your mainstay of managing those 10, 12 CT scores?
So the mainstay of management is that proper oxygen and prone positioning. So this is what actually helps them to means prevents them from landing up in ventilator.
So
because what we have found is the COVID patient and prone positioning, sir. This is something which has to be and proning them, sir. Means conscious proning.
Okay. Get your point. Thank you.
Sir, I have a suggestion, sir.
Yes.
That once we are talking about, you asked of pulmonary manifestations. This will be my strong message to all my colleagues that diabetic patients need to have immediate, even if they don't have pulmonary symptoms, the baseline HRCT. We have seen n number of diabetic patients having a reasonably high CT scores in spite of not being symptomatic. So a baseline HRCT, even if it will help us to pick up the asymptomatic with pulmonary infiltrate. Secondly, a baseline CT of all the diabetic patients to be repeated after 1 week or so will have the progression of the pulmonary involvement to be assessed. So I think I would say that all diabetic patients, sometimes we wait for CT scans to be done, but all diabetic patients should have a CT scan on to begin with or the day one, so that we pick up very silent pulmonary involvement, which is very common in diabetic patients.
Thank you.
I totally agree to this.
Jayant?
Yeah. Rightly told. Now I'll take the opinion from Unni regarding the issue that should we call few diabetic patients who don't fit to the teleconsultation, because can everybody be consulted over telemedicine, or few we should ask to come face to face with proper COVID appropriate behavior?
So I feel that, certain situations patients have to make a face-to-face visit. If they are symptomatic, if they have symptoms of high-grade fever, if they have organ dysfunction, they have uncontrolled hypertension, if they have noticed a worsening of vision, they have noticed a foot infection or ulcer, or they have got chest pain. So any acute event, I think managing on telemedicine is not a good idea. A chronic, long-term, regular follow-up patients are the ideal thing. I think in the long run, we as doctors will choose this patient. Okay, you are coming to me regularly. We can, you could follow up on telemedicine. But most of the acute or semi-acute patients have to be brought for a face-to-face visit. So I think it's very important, and time will tell us where it's headed. But I think looks like face-to-face consultations and patients visiting clinics are coming back strongly, and most patients and doctors like to have the physical examination and clinical discussion. Of course, chronic stable patients on just requiring follow-up, may be managed still on telemedicine.
Unni, I have a question. While Jayant comes back to the forum, I will ask you that recent times have seen Sudhir, little bit of changes in the criteria. Now we have come back to simpler criteria for the diagnosis of, I'm talking about Americans who had IADPG, they have come back to the 140 up to 2 hours criteria, because they said why patients should go 3 times to do a challenge test, again, the IADPG.
Very rightly, you are told.
There has been a change of criteria only of the diagnosis of GDM. Now they said that IADPG is difficult to do. It's a mixed shift arrangement. So we can go back to the, they have said we'll go back to dipstick criteria for the time being to reduce the number of contacts. Similarly, many criteria and the practice guideline has been little different, number one. Number two, to you and to Sudhir and to Arul Raj, that Mohan gave a presentation and a paper says that during lockdown period, he has found diabetes was better controlled. He found that people they have better control. So what's your take on that?
So now that the pandemic is over, I think we should stick to the HAPO study-based WHO recommendations, which is for GDM fasting 92, 1 hour 180, and 2 hour 153. And regarding Dr. Mohan's paper, I think that is an important paper because that shows that given good infrastructure, education, motivation, and good care, people with diabetes are able to control their blood glucose levels during the COVID period. Whether that is reflective of every social economic setting in our vast country, that is a question, because we have the poorest of the poor, people struggling, losing jobs, stress, not able to diet, exercise. So I think from a holistic perspective, I think COVID would have, at the very least, would have made changes affecting the health of people with diabetes.
Over to Jayant.
We are approaching time. So before
I think we have got 7 minutes more. 11:30, the session 8 will begin. Now it is 7 minutes more.
Sir, so quickly I'll go to Dr. Arul Raj regarding an important aspect. Arul Raj sir, are you there?
We have 2 minutes more.
2 minutes, huh? Okay.
So I think Arul Raj sir is not there. So Dr. Sudhir Bhandari, I'll take opinion.
Yes,
what
sir.
about the associated comorbidities? We have seen that there is a lot of confusion regarding use of ACE inhibitors. The ACE2 receptor, drugs working on ACE2 receptor. There are a lot of question marks like glitazones, like ARBs, like ACE inhibitors. So suppose a patient whole of drug. So what is your opinion regarding that?
Truly speaking, sir, initially there were some studies which did not approve ACE2 receptor blockers, but now there has been no implications and they can be allowed to be continued. So ACE2 receptors as an antihypertensive in diabetic patient and non-diabetic patient in COVID positive can be safely continued with no implications or no risk of increasing severity.
Though we have not started these drugs afresh, but those who are on treatment, we have never discontinued.
Yes, sir. But even then, there has been some papers mentioning that even if you want to start, because along with the antihypertensive effect, there are certain advantages of this group of drugs. So there has been not a specific contraindication. Even they can be introduced as a fresh also. So not a big issue with ARBs, with most of the paper say about.
So thank you, Dr. Sudhir Bhandari, and I think it's time. So we had a very excellent panel. First, I thank Dr. Unni for giving us little extra time. Not only we heard his presentation, but also he stayed to be a part of the panel discussion. And our panelists, Dr. Raman Ganga Khedkar, Dr. Sudhir Bhandari, Dr. Arul Raj, and Dr. Sampath Das have done a very good work by giving the message how COVID has affected diabetes, how diabetes has affected COVID, how we went through and what we learned from this pandemic, and the most important, the complications, the comorbidities, the vaccine, the pulmonary involvement, everything we have taken. So I request Professor Das to give a final word and we'll close the panel discussion. Sir, on mute.
A wonderful discussion. And I sincerely appreciate the talk by Unni for the new phraseology, and I don't think he has patented it, Unni. I am taking away your patent, so it is a great word. And this pandemic diabetology is going to show us new ideas. Sudhir, thank you very much for the great insight, as usual. This is the 4th time we are together, Sudhir, but not the last time.
No.
And your chapter in the book also has come, will be a path lighter for the whole country. Sudhir, I greatly appreciate your participation and being with us.
Thank you.
Raman, as usual, I must tell you that I'm extremely, I won't say grateful to my dear friend. I really very, very closer to you today by these discussions. You are great, Padam Shri, going to get Padma Bhushan. And you know, I must tell you that your contribution in the field of COVID-19 and COVID-19 diabetes has been phenomenal. And I agree with Hindu, which said your country's ICMR's face for COVID-19. I put on record, and I do understand that I could not connect you in between, but whenever I connected, you have always given me the hope and answered all my questions. Thank you very much, Raman, for being with us. I do thank Sampath. Sampath is absolutely unassuming, and Sampath, I really appreciate your presence. 1,800 cases you said you are analyzing, 460 and over. Great. Thank you very much, Sampath, for the insight you gave. Your internet had some problem, but doesn't matter. But you have made your day by sharing with us your finding, your thoughts, your pulmonary X-ray findings, the way you treat, and the finding on the 416 cases with diabetes and without diabetes. Great, Sampath. I really thank my brother Jayant for being here with me and doing something. Now it is time that
Dr. Arul Raj.
I'm coming to him last, sir. I have kept the dessert for the last. Arul Raj is a phenomenon. And as you just heard, his contribution, one talk with Modi from our PM, Mr. Modi, brought out the March 25th ICMR guideline. I hope, Professor Arul Raj, your presence amidst us will be a great, great augury for the good things to come, good things to happen in the country, in the API and for the patients. Thank you very much. And I thank everybody. We'll pass on to session 8.